The two primary languages that are used in ASP.NET, Visual Basic.NET and C#, are syntactically very different from each other, but they both use the underlying .NET class library, the set of components that enable your web applications. When you're first learning a programming language, it's useful to have a testing environment, a simple application to which you can add arbitrary code and that displays the results of running that code. In this chapter, I demonstrate how to use critical aspects of the two programming languages. This is what the web form page looks like. It has a heading, a text box, and two buttons labeled Run Code and Clear Console. Let's take a look at the source code. I'll open the code up to full screen by pressing the keyboard shortcut Alt-Shift-Enter. Notice that within the form there are two panels. A panel is a server-side control that translates as a div tag, so you can easily force content to be stacked one on top of another. Within the first panel there's a text box with a text mode attribute of multi-line. This allows the text box control to display multiple lines of text. And then within the second panel there are two buttons with IDs of Run Button and Clear Button, and they each have an on-click event handler that runs a function. In these pages, the scripting code is in the page rather than in a separate code file. So the script code goes toward the top, and notice that the script tag has run@=server attribute, meaning that it contains server-side code rather than client-side JavaScript code. Each of the two pages, the C# and the Visual Basic version, have a function called output. The purpose of the output function is to append a value to the current text property of the text box with an ID of output text. Notice that it uses a += operator. This is called the increment operator, and it adds a value to the existing value. And then an expression called environment.newLine is used to add a carriage return line feed combination at the end of the line. So each time the output function is called, it will add the line to the text box and then go down to the next line. In the current version of the C# page, the Run Button Click function calls this function output and passes in a value of Hello World. And then when the user clicks the Clear button, the text property of the text box is set to a blank string. So that's all the code in our testing environment. Let's give it a try. I'll run the application without debugging. I'll click the Run Code button a few times, and you'll see that each time I click the button, I'm appending a value to the existing text box control's text property. And then when I click Clear Console, that results in clearing the text box. Now, I'm going to be using this page as the base for all of my exercises. So before I leave it, I'm just going to go back to the Run Button Click function, and I'm going to remove the call to the output function. And this will be the base file that I copy for each exercise. Now, I'll close that file, and I'll press Alt-Shift-Enter again so I can see my panels, and I'll open up the Visual Basic version. Let's take a look at this one in full screen. The markup code in the Visual Basic version is exactly the same. It has the same two panels, the text box and the two buttons. The IDs are the same, and the click events are the same. But notice that the syntax of the scripting code is a little bit different. In Visual Basic, a function that doesn't return a value is called a sub or a subroutine. The subroutine output is marked with protected sub at the beginning and end sub at the end. The code within the function is almost exactly the same as the C# version. The exception is that there's no semicolon at the end of the line. I'm still, however, using environment.newLine to represent a carriage return line feed combination. The Run Button Click event still calls the output function, passes in a text value of Hello World, and the Clear Button Click event still sets the text property to a blank string. I'll run this version of the page without debugging. I'll test it by clicking the Run Code button a few times, and I'll clear the console. Then I'll close the page, and as with the C# version, I'll remove the call to output from the click event so that I can use this as the base page for all of the other exercises in this chapter. So if you don't have access to the exercise files, create your version of this page using the code that I've displayed on the screen, and then for each exercise make a copy of that page so that you can go through that particular exercise.